بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رضي الله تعالى عنه وسائر التابعين وعلماء عاملين وأئمة أربع المجتهدين ومقلديهم إلى يوم الدين وبعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. We just wanted to do a quick off-topic discussion about preparing our youth, and it is to bring us before he mentioned this with the news of the Amir, the Majlis Ashura, the Imam of Al-Ummah, Imam Asim Abdul Rashid. He said he just returned to Allah, rahmatullahi alayhi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him Jannah, Ameen. One second. Now, this topic, I guess, is like kind of like right on point. Now, I'm supposed to have the A team on. My other partners here, I haven't seen them come on yet, but I got my right hand man, man Malik. You know what I'm saying? Up in the Spizak. But we chop it up. We gonna just kick it, inshallah. It's nothing like real formal or anything of that nature, but we just want to talk about, making preparation for our youth. And so some of the things I want to mention, like one of the first things I want to mention about preparation for our youth is education, right? Educating them of those things that are necessary in the Sharia. Now, I know, sometimes as parents and as adults and leaders, sometimes we want to educate the children. We definitely want to educate them with adab, about the du'as to make when you go to the bathroom, the du'as to make when you wake up in the morning, learning selected surahs, of the Quran, Arabic. And sometimes that's where it stops at, right? Usually sometimes if you check and look at the curriculum, especially for American Muslims, if you look at all of, and when you read and understand, alaikum salam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Farouk, when you look at the history and the legacy of Islam and the tradition of how things were passed down, there was always set curriculums, There was always set curriculums, for the children. Like when you read some curriculums, so they always started off with the children. They would start learning the Quran. Some as young as 5, some young as 7. There's no real age requirement. But when you're talking and you're thinking of when you have the vision, right? You have a vision, not the vision, but a vision, right? And you're thinking about the future. You have no other choice but to start at ground zero. Starting at ground zero with the family. So, of course, husband, wife. And if you think about it, within the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the Quran, he mentions in one ayah about, not worshiping anything besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then after that, he talks about the your behavior, righteousness towards your parents, right? Righteousness towards your parents. So these are some of the things that are emphasized on. I'm kind of sound like I'm moving all over the place, but I'm actually not. So my case in point that I'm getting to is that our children, it has to begin. You begin with the youth, and usually how you establish your relationship with your youth, especially as leaders, it always starts with education. That is how you get your relationship with the youth, right? It's never anything else. It always starts with education. Usually the Quran, when you have that relationship with those, you teach them the Quran, you build a relationship. It's almost like you have 3 fathers in life, right? I'm saying 3 because your biological father, but then you also have your grandfather, right? The grandfather is your father. Then you have what you call like a spiritual father, and usually your first father, that father that you run into, if it's not your biological father teaching you, or maybe your older brother, or so on and so forth, that spiritual father is your teacher, right? And he kind of grooms you, and you take on the characteristics of your teacher. And if anyone knows your teacher, then and they see you and you inherit that character from that teacher as well. This is why Imam Malik, when he was his mother was prompted him to go learn, she told him when he went to his teacher to learn from his adab, right? Learn from his adab. And so, and I mentioned in a previous class before this, last week's class of the Islamic behavior, there's a difference between adab and khulq, right? Adab and khulq, I'm sorry. Khulq is your actual character, right? But the adab is like learning etiquette, you're cultured, you're reared, you're molded. And so when you're talking about adab, it's the adab with that is connected to the sharia, where you're taking on that adab, that behavior, right? And then you have the tarbiyah, where you're training your implementation of the adab, the etiquettes that you're learning from adab, where it becomes your khuluq, where it becomes your character. You understand? So when you're molding that person. That imam is everything to their youth, and you have to have that relationship to the youth. The youth, in the past, and uh, in past situations where people where they have their youth, they kind of like just like shove them and give them a basketball, right? And sometimes when we're constantly putting our youth into playing, you're putting them into an immature mind, right? We have to groom our young. Now, this is the thing. As we in our masajid, we love to give them video games and basketballs and things of that nature, right? But when they hit the streets, they give them guns and drugs, and they push them to adulthood. Then the system no longer sees them as the innocent young child. They take them in and put them in the penal system, and treat them as adults as well, right? The only one of the few differences between a youth facility and an adult facility is maybe they give them board games in a youth facility, right? But the same problems they have in an adult facility is the same is the same problem. So when we have them in the masjid, we're not preparing them at all for any type of leadership. We're just like, we only just like contributed to them, being dependent, especially
What happened?
Phone call mess. Them phone calls that mess up your live or your message. There you go.
Yeah, now I'm back. So yeah, so you get we're preparing them to keep continue being children. You're making them dependent, right? You're not teaching them how to be independent. And sometimes by default, some leaders that's what they do. They teach their jamaat up to a certain point, but then make them reliant upon them. Like the trend, right? The trend is, if you notice, and I can't say this for all communities, but there's a lot of communities that do this, and you'll recognize it. They will teach them certain things up to a certain point. Now, in most curriculums are formatted. They're formatted behind one of the four schools, right? And of course, it's consistent of books. And you have what you call the more the elementary level books, where you learn the fiqh ibadah, where you learn it about your basic ibadah, like the salat, wudu, fasting, right? Some books they go over that. Like you get Al Afdari. It has in the beginning it talks about certain portions of dealing with etiquette, with adab, like we talking about, and then it goes into salat and wudu. Some books that start off with aqidah, then it goes into ibadat. Like I said, some goes further and further. When you complete one book, you go to the next one, then you go to the next one, then you go to the next one. It's a build-up process, right? Some communities they teach you, or teachers I should say, they teach you up to a certain point, and then what happens when it comes to fiqh mu'amala, the understanding or dealing with the science of ilm mu'amala, dealing with the science of behavior, you almost have like this fatwa based type of education, meaning you're constantly coming and asking your sheikh, and I'm not talking about somebody that hasn't, or maybe they haven't learned. But what I'm saying is there's a certain, at a certain point, you should know this, right? Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us, "So talibu ilma faridatu ala kulli Muslim," right? That seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. Now, al-ilm is specific, right? The Aleph Lam precedes it is specific. It's not ilmun, where it being not specific nakira, but it's ma'rifa. It's specific, right? And this knowledge is those knowledge that is fard. It's obligatory for you to know these knowledges, and what's contained in that is those things that is connected to tahara, to purification, and those rulings that are connected to it. But however, back to the fatwa-based type of Islam. Now, how you get caught in the fatwa-based type of Islam is one of two ways. Either one, your teacher limits you in learning, or the second thing, you limit yourself in learning by not being engaged in learning, but you always have a bunch of questions. And usually what happens with this person, they ask a series or a plethora of questions. Sometimes it's just like, I was just thinking today. Let me ask you a question. And you're like, yo, where did this come from?
His is worse than mine yesterday.
Let me see how this works out. Because I turned off my Wi-Fi. They do us dirty up North Philly. They do us dirty. It's the internet. I suppose the guy at Xfinity. Xfinity's a good internet company, but even Malik, he just usually be giving up, just cops out. Like, yo, I'm having technical difficulties. I was talking about you was on the screen though. But anyway, so sometimes this happens. People, they limit themselves, and so then you're constantly asking, always seeking. And if they're not seeking from their imam, then they're on Facebook. What happens at this? What happens at that? What happens with this? And what happens with that? And then you just, you got some random, Joe Schmo out here just saying any old type of thing. Well, your marriage isn't this because of this, and it's valid because of that. You need to take shahada because of this, and you need to do this because, and it's just going and it's just going and it's going in a circle, right? If you look at the Islam, and also too, another thing, what inspires us is sometimes what affects our perception is the type of history that you're following. A lot of us always try to become like a social engineer or a social architect, but some of the books that we're reading is about pre-medieval or medieval scholars where Islam is already established, and here it is, 2022, you're trying to establish, Markaza Ibn Taymiyyah or Markaza Bukhari, in these cities, and you're expecting these, men to be walking around, Hafiz of Quran and these things. It takes time to build up. What's more identifiable and more approachable for us is when you read about the men who are around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? You'll see a lot of similarities between yourself and them. And one of the things that you'll see with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the people that were around him, especially in the beginning, was the closest that was within his family. But not only just the people that was closest within his family, but also you'll see young men. One of the first male followers that followed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Ali ibn Abi Talib, karamallahu wajh, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, right? And he was a young boy. They debate about whether his exact age was 6 or whether it was 8 years old when he joined the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? But however, you see this, and from that time, Ali was being groomed. What did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say about Ali? He said that Ali is what? He was the Babul Ilm. He was the door of knowledge, right? So these things were being said. So as a leader, as a husband as well. When I'm saying leader, I'm using male leadership in its totality, because every male, every family should have an amir that they're connected to that has a jamaat. This is how you begin to pass down the legacy, So anyway, each individual is passing down this legacy, and you're passing down by means of knowledge, right? We need to stop passing the basketball per se, literally just the only thing that we seem to care about, or passing them just the science book alone, but make it an overall thing, I'll chime back in and I'll let some of the other brothers come on. I got some of the A team on here. So inshallah, you go ahead. Introduce yourselves and speak. Inshallah, and add to the conversation. Inshallah.
Look at Ahmed. Ahmed, join in, man. We need some of that
He
older
there? I put
wisdom,
him in.
inshallah.
He right
Yeah,
there
that's
in
what
the
I'm saying.
shadows.
Yeah, give us some of that
I'm,
advice, Afi.
you gotta give me a sec. Y'all go ahead, man. I'm trying to catch the conversation. I'm just coming on.
Who would like to go? Who would like to get jiggy? Inshallah.
uh, I guess I probably could piggyback on what he said, what you were saying, Mir Khalil, about the fatwa base, like learning. I think it goes more towards naqal and aql, So when you say fatwa base, only thing I can think of, well, I can actually agree with you because a lot of people go on with that, you know, this stepped everything, this none flexibility in that. This is how it is, and it ain't nothing else. That naqal, that straight textual application of the deen. Guys get a hold of a book speaking about whatever it might have been speaking about at that time, 700 years old, and then they try to mirror that text word for word, jot for jot, which doesn't necessarily match up with the time, nor does it necessarily match up with the people in which you're trying to implement it upon. A lot of times that goes directly to the problem of how do we make the historical text interact with our time, right? Because in every situation, there's a new situation. So we can't start with that age-old fatwa base, step into one beat and know nothing else. I think it's a, like he said, a more graded approach that's necessary from learning the beginning, learning what's in the middle, and then learning what's at the end. A lot of times people start with what's at the end and forget about the beginning. And now everybody's a mujtahid, starting at the end and forgetting about the beginning. Now you have no foundation when you start at the end. Everybody's not as mujtahid. Like he said, walking around, everybody's supposed to be hafiz al-Quran. Take time to get to that. And that's not the case. You got some groups that say follow the Quran and Sunnah, and that's it, nothing else. We don't need nothing else because the Prophet ﷺ only followed the Quran and Sunnah, right? Kalimatu haqqan yuridu bihi al-batil. That's correct, but you meant something false behind it. Inappropriate application of that. I think we do much better if we were to take things as a graded approach. How traditionally you learn, and the application comes because throughout that time of learning and obtaining such knowledge, you're going to go through experiences which prompts you to applicate that knowledge. And upon application, you find that you need different ways, and you find different ways to apply that knowledge that doesn't necessarily match up with the historical text from which you obtained it. But it happens to be the best way forward for your present situations. That's one of the things that I get from, if you were to read or hear anything in the previous text, that speak to people according to their understanding. Well, understandings are one thing, and then you have to speak to the times also. So times will make application of what we know different, and how we think out things and how we apply certain texts, and how we, because we in a different world, different time. How they ran the situation in the Islamic world in the age and time of Genghis Khan or the Seljuks or Salahuddin Ayyubi or something like that, they wasn't the same as when the Omar ibn Abdul Aziz was there, right? And he had such scholars as Imam Malik that advised him and others. Their applications are different because their time is different and what they deal with is different. So ultimately, what they got from it is different from what we would get from it and what we would get and apply from that for our time and our people, So we can go learn from a Pakistani the basics or whatever, or a Saudi or whatever your sheikh may be, if you want to get it from the source and it's a good source, inshallah ta'ala, and he's not giving you something bad information. But he does his manner in which he applies, it wouldn't necessarily be good for how you would apply to your neighborhood, because where he comes from, his culture differs. And in Islamic law, we know that culture is a thing to be considered when making rulings and making judgments and teaching people. Culture is to be considered in all things in Islam. But, Allahu A'lam, inshallah ta'ala, if we find a way as African Americans to apply it in a way in which it would separate the African American, I would say, social construct of how we deal with life. Our approach as African Americans is different from most other cultures, right? So when we adapt Islam, we try to make Islam adapt to how we are already living, as opposed to taking Islam's core and modifying our life to a way in which will fit Islam to the best of our abilities, right? Because you do what's to the best of your ability. That's all I actually, and there's many ways and techniques or whatever you might have. Allah knows best what would be the best way for us forward. But first things first. First things first. You can't do anything unless you know what you're doing. So first things first is education, Islamic education, and not education where we just pick up any book because a scholar wrote it and then we start reading and try to take from that. Because the problem with that is you may not understand what you think you understand. Right? There was a story from Imam Abu Hanifa. Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, said, well, the situation went like this: that one of his students, it was a scholar in town or whatever that preaching, pretty famous scholar, and Imam Abu Hanifa told him, one of his students, "Hey, I don't want you to go there." He said, "No, I'll go. I just want to see what he's talking about. I want to be able to understand him and whatever." He said, "No, don't go." He said, "Listen, I won't take anything from him except what I understand." He said, "That's the problem. That's what I fear. I fear what you think you understand." Right? Because many students, we have this perception that we understood this, we may understand everything else. When in actuality, in Tarbiyya, they only give you steps up until, they add on. It's graded steps. You add on every time you go. You don't get everything until you reach the end. Right? That's what dubur is. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ أَقْفَالُهَا. Tadabbur is to get at the end of something. The end of something is called dubur in Arabic. And tadabbur is to try to reach the end. In other words, in the Quran, are you not reaching the end of the Quran? Not the surface meanings, but the end. Right? So, to get to the end of the education, there must be a beginning. And if we don't fix it within ourselves to know that we don't know everything, we'd never know anything. But Allah knows best how we go about that. Anybody else? I mean, I'm just, anybody chime in at any time, correct me if I'm wrong, or say something that may further the conversation.
No, Assalamu
Why?
Walaikum assalam.
just on one of the points you made about how a lot of us try to skip the beginning, jump to the middle, the end, so on. I think that part of it is from our Western upbringing. Where in the West we kind of have this microwave mentality where we want results quickly. A person doesn't want to take the time to diet, right? So they go get, surgery, body con surgery. A person, wants knowledge, so they try to jump to the hardest book. They don't want to go through the process. I know one of our teachers, Amir Khalil, he always quotes one of his scholars who says, drop by drop, the valley is filled up. And we don't want to go through that process of taking the steps, taking the time, because with time things become clearer, things actually start to make sense, and everything that actually has any value goes through that, goes through time, the aging process, and then actually it intensifies its value and so on and so forth. But I think that's part of the problem. We just have to trust the process, for lack of better words. Start at the beginning, master them basics. A building is not built roof down; is built from the foundation up. And if we continue to think with that Western mindset, where we have to have results immediately, that is going to always cause us some conflict, and we're never going to achieve anything, substantial, because we're not going through the process in its totality from beginning to end. That's all I wanted to chime in or piggyback off your statement. You have an idea.
One thing I also like what Imam Nadir said himself is that how we try to put Islam, to the lifestyle that we're living ourselves. Are y'all able to hear me? Is my service good?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I just think about it. The aspect. Both of them things run hand in hand, right? This fatwa base, meaning starting from the, and starting from the end, also putting, trying to mix Islam to the lifestyle that we're living instead of diving wholeheartedly in Islam, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, come to Islam wholeheartedly, right? So just thinking about that, right? You know, not having the knowledge what is spoken about at the time is not cool. So sometimes we try to go to the end, so we try to figure out what everyone is talking about so we could fit into that in crowd, right? We don't think about, the narrations of the Prophet ﷺ when he said that, Islam begins strange, it will end strange. So give good tidings to those who are strange. In our culture now, being a stranger is like almost frowned upon. Being different is frowned upon. And that's why we have this trending culture now. What's the new trend? I mean, what is everybody else is doing in society, right? Oh, somebody's putting corn in their nose. Let's try that out. That's trending. So let's go stick corn in our nose, right? So not being in, what's going on is kind of frowned upon in our culture. So we try to, dive into, what's the hottest topic, or, especially Islam. Like, you think about, everything now, like a person can't tell you about their Fard Ain, right? What is their personal daily obligations every day? But they could tell you about who is refuting who and what they're refuting about. And when did they refute him? Well, Sheikh Albani said this about, Sheikh so and so, that he said this back in 1993. How do you know all of that, okay? But you don't know how, what's the articans of wudu, right? How we don't know that? Because it's not good to know, you know, these things. It's good to know what everybody else is talking about. So we try to go to the end because everybody's talking about what's the end results of something, right? Or who not to sit with, who's not to go, who's not to follow, right? So we try to do all of that. Is the end, is the cool crowd, right? Just like, we think about what's trending now. The new trend now in Philadelphia, which has been the trend for like the year and a half, is the Yemeni Izar, with with your pants showing half, a little bit, with the matching socks, with a regular shirt. We're doing all these things because it's not cool to be the oddball, right? It's not cool to be the stranger, right? When the Prophet ﷺ said to give good tidings to those that are strange, right? It's not cool to be the outcast, right? You start implementing certain sunnahs that's not cool. They're gonna look at you like, oh, what's the word you say all the time, Khalil, goofy Sufi, right? You walk in, you got your cuffs on, you got a miswak in your pocket, you got an imama, because there's this what's the scarf with the crease in the middle, right? The crease in the middle is not really the sunnah, right? The imam is a sunnah. You walk around with this crease in the middle, looking like a royal prince. This is what the Prophet doesn't wear that. But you got a turban on, you got your miswak on, you got your cups on, right? You offer 2 raka'ah after wudu. They're gonna look at you like you some sort of weirdo. And you're just trying to implement Islam to the best of your ability, trying to get all the barakahs of the sunnah that the Prophet loved, right? So doing these things is not cool. So we try to learn, start from the end, because it's cool to know these topics, right? It's cool to know who's upon bid'ah, right? But not know why they say they're on bid'ah. Now you have to do your research, right? Now you have to dive into the books. Now you got to start, okay, who was the imam who started this? That's the beginning. You got to find out who the imam who said that, who said this. You got to do that. But it's harder to do that, right? It's harder to do that, and this is the problem we are having now, but on the, to play, the devil's advocate, sometimes just having a fatwa based to the common folk is cool, right? It's all right, because we think about, another narration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when a Bedouin came in and said, if I pray fast, do this while making the Jannah. He said, yes, you would. He said, okay, that's all I'm doing, and left. Right? They just gave him, say, okay, you just do that, you're okay. Right? Just do that and you're okay. Right? So sometimes that's good if we have that mentality, that if somebody hears and they obey. So, man, that what taught in that. Brother, you need to pray your fast salat. Okay, cool. That's what I'm gonna do, brother. And that's gonna be good for me. Yeah, that's gonna be good for you. Okay, I'm gonna try to do that, and I'm gonna be the best at that. Right? Sometimes that is okay to just have these bases. And the brother come, okay, Sheikh, if I do this, if I do that, will it mess this up? Yes, it will. Okay, thank you. I ain't gonna do that no more. Sometimes it's not always a bad thing, but it's a bad thing when we're just content of just having that, when we know we can do something to the best of our ability, like Imam Nadir said, right? Right. So we got to at least try to seek the knowledge to increase ourselves, because knowledge, gaining knowledge is how we get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who have knowledge are those who's going to love Allah more. So gaining knowledge is going to increase us to love Allah, right? And we got to emphasize, learning, and like I said, and teaching our children to be strangers again, right? Not wanting to do everything, that everybody is doing, right? Because we have a tendency of now, as parents, that if our son don't got the newest Jordans that everybody else got, he's not cool. But no, sometimes you don't have to get the newest Jordans, right? Sometimes you tell them, like, look, bro, look, bro, you get the white on white Air Force Ones. Why is that, Pop? Because white on white Air Force Ones go with anything. You good. You could throw that on with this. You could throw that on with that. You're always in the safe zone, and they fresh. Okay, cool. That's wisdom, right? I'm just, I'm trying to get us to relate, for people who's watching, to understand these things. Instead of wearing something that everybody else is wearing, and pretty soon it's going to go out of style. So now he's chasing for the next high. We need to stop having our children chase for the next high, So, that's all I wanted to say, mashallah. And anybody else want to tune in, mashallah, feel free.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim wa taslima. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Afdalu salatu wa tamu taslima ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. ورضي الله تعالى نادى سادة التابعين علماء عاملين وأئمة أربعين مجتهدين مقلديهم إلى يوم الدين. But I don't know if everyone can hear me. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I hear you good.
Can you hear me?
I hear you good.
All right. All right. No. in preparing our youth, we have to prepare our youth for not just Islamically but also secularly as well. It's for example, we have like 15 youth in the masjid, ranging from age from say from 4 to like 15, right? 4 to 15. The aspirations for Deen, we have to internalize them so that our youth can see that they can set their bar high. Also, the encouragement for knowledge, Islamically and secularly, into these sciences and fields and professions and trades, to where all of the youth that have, not only do they have a career, but they have a profession. One may become a plumber, one may become an electrician, one may become a engineer, one may become a communications technician. One may become a carpenter, one may become a bricklayer, iron worker. All of these skills and trades are geared towards building the necessary things that are needed in society to generate and operate a community. Also you have the doctors and the lawyers and the doctors and the lawyers and the law enforcement and all of this, the intelligence agents and all of this stuff. So all of this is a part of education, and education is something that is something that puts you ahead of the game of everyone else. One of the pitfalls that the Uthmani Caliphate had, the Ottoman Turks had, in regards when they conquered Constantinople, is that the walls of Constantinople, they had to figure out a way how to penetrate them. So they didn't have the technology to build big cannons. So they went into the city, broke one of the engineers out of the prison, Christian engineer, to contract him to build this massive cannon. And that, you know what I'm saying, in order to move the cannon, they had to move the cannon from one part over a hill to another part. Long story short, these are one of the things in regards to technology that they didn't have, or anyone that didn't have this knowledge amongst the Muslims to complete this task. Moving further on into the future, the same thing will happen with the installment of the Ottoman Empire into World War One on the side of Germany. You mean the Orient Express was a train that went from Germany to Turkey. So, you know what I'm saying, their involvement in entering into the war as an ally gave them certain ability to access to technology that Germany and other countries that they was allies with has already made these technological advances. So that, you know what I'm saying, this is one of the things that we'll be faced with, because you never know when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may bless us with governance. You never know when that may happen. One of the problems when there was in Ethiopia, when Haile Selassie in the 50s, he was trying to make his last move out of office was to hand over the rulership of Ethiopia back to the Muslims. At that time, the Muslims wasn't equipped to actually be able to run the affairs of the state. So what happened? A series of political parties had sprung up, to where they all fought for seat of control for the government. Well, you know, so I'm kind of digressing a little bit, but my point that I'm making is that we, you know, in preparing our youth, we have to instill all of these elements in them, along with instilling in them the capabilities of leadership, and not just one, but all of them with equipping them with the capabilities of leadership, because you will never know who's going to be appointed as the leader, and who's ever appointed as the leader, they got to have the necessary skills and the knowledge and understanding and the wherewithal and the commitment to be able to fulfill that slot or that position.
Hey, I want to add though, like he said about the the readiness, because readiness is everything. You know, 100% of our life will be, well, should be. Let me rephrase that. Should be preparing yourself for the hereafter. All right, in preparation, because when it gets here, it's over. You know, you can be here today and leave tomorrow very quickly. And the problem with that is most of us aren't ready because we spend the time in which we should be spending getting ready playing or procrastinating, you know, because we engrossed in this worldly life or whatever may be the case. But preparedness is everything. This past Friday, yesterday, when we had Jumu'ah, and I see this mostly amongst the Somali community, but not necessarily amongst in the Indo-Pak community, which is the most, not necessarily the most dominant, but they're the most wealthy community here where I live at. And I don't often see them putting their young folk like in position, not necessarily in position, but in leadership at the masjid early. They groom them very well, but they don't put them in like position early. But one thing I noticed yesterday when I was at Jumu'ah amongst the Somali community, which is the dominant community here where I stay, they put their youth in position very early. Very early. One of the masjid I did go to yesterday, they had two young brothers run the whole show. After the first Jumu'ah was the Imam al-Khatib, the regular Imam that's there, which I don't usually go to the first Jumu'ah, which is a couple hundred. It's probably at least 1,000 people there. It's just too packed to be going there then, but I go to the second one. And this week they had the young brothers up there. The two main brothers, Muazzin and the Imam, that gave the khutbah. You know, they couldn't have been probably 19, 20 years old, if that. Very well spoken, you can tell they're very educated in Islam. Arabic perfect, recitation perfect, call it Zion, organize the people, make sure they did everything, you know. So they are preparing the younger generation to take over soon, these brothers, because once they leave, it's over. None of the older brothers really run any of the classes at the masjid. All of the younger brothers run the classes at the masjid. You talking about as one of the masjids that I go to, they might have 7, 8 classes going at one time because they got a bunch of different classrooms in the masjid. This is every week, every day. No older adults are in there. It's younger brothers, 16, 17, the young brothers that already done learn, or sisters also that already done learn what they need to learn. Now they teaching the younger kids, that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, you know, elementary kids, and they middle school kids, high school kids, teaching them. Then the adults, which would we say, I'm saying like 18 and older, that's probably out of school or maybe in college or working or whatever, they're doing the day-to-day. But you see the older, crowd, they there. They still like run it, but they don't run it. hands off, because they still got the respect in the community. And the main imam, of course, is still one of the older brothers. But you got the junior imams and the brothers that lead the salah. If the imam isn't there or the imam is there, sometimes he just had the younger brothers leading the salah or teaching the classes. You don't really see the older guys teaching. Not necessarily. I mean, they might hold a class or something like that for the whole masjid, but like individual classes for learning, it's all younger folks teaching. These are kids teaching. It's not none of our age in there teaching. And how do you I respect that, but we don't have that in the African American community. In fact, in my area, we have, I wouldn't say a dominantly African American masjid, but it's where most of the African Americans go to. Masjid Taqwa over on Taylor Street, but there's no dominant African American masjid where you see our kids running around and teaching classes or learning or much like that. But so we're not prepared. If they were to give us a masjid right now, we wouldn't be prepared. The African American community wouldn't be prepared. Not in a sense to have a structure going, because the problem with African American community also, we don't recognize leadership. We don't recognize authority. We have a problem with authority as African Americans generally. And then we bring that baggage over to Islam once we become Muslim. So the problem is that, as far as taking over, we're not prepared at all. And it's sad, but also it's necessary to evaluate the situation and come up with a solution to eradicate it. Fix the problem. We know it's there. We know the problem is there. And okay, now what's the root cause? We have to find that, because you have to eradicate that, and try to bring us all into a situation where, because I don't know why, but this is the African American community. Authority is distasteful to us. Maybe it's down off of times of slavery, right? Because we didn't like our leaders then, of course, but it was what it was. But now, even since the 60s, most leaders were killed off, right? Most powerful leaders were killed off in the African American community. And then it became infighting. We get a guy up, and then we got to tear him down because he did something we didn't like, or we did something he didn't agree with. We didn't agree with. None of us seeing it through. None of us having the wherewithal to make sure the community stay together as a whole prior to, trying to see what he got to offer. We don't even allow a guy to see what he got to offer before we write him off as being useless to the community, right? And that leads again to us starting over. We constantly starting over, never gaining traction within Islamic realms, because not in just life period, but in Islamic realms, because we constantly starting over. We get somebody we like, cut them off, because it's a group that jump on him, cut him down, and now we get somebody we like and he cut him off. Or the people that's up there don't want to allow the younger generation to come up, and we holding each other back. Now we starting over again. So the problem is that we're not prepared most of the time, and must get prepared, because at some point falsehood falls by the wayside, right? And with all these teachers and people giving khutbah, whatever, but none of them know the deen. And what I say by that, there's a hadith from I don't know the companion's name. I know it's in the Tabarani, but there's a hadith I'm quoting in part. I'm not saying this is the exact quote, but it did this. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was alleged to have said there will come a time in which that you living in a time in which your people who understanding of the religion, your fuqaha, are many, and your khutaba are very few. But there will come a time in which there will be many khutaba people who give talks, discourses, get khutbah. And your fuqaha, the people that actually understand the religion and able to teach the religion according to how it's supposed to be taught, will be very few. And at that time in which the khutbah are many and your fuqaha are few, knowledge will be better than action. Right? He said, but they were living in a time in which action was better than knowledge. Right? In other words, in their time, they had very many people who understood the religion, fuqaha. Those in which the Prophet Muhammad said, "Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fi din." These are the fuqaha, the people that understood the religion. Whomever Allah wishes good for, He gives him understanding in the religion. These are fuqaha. These are the people that Allah says, you know, fasalu ahla dhikri in kuntum la ta'lamun. These are the fuqaha, right? So it's plenty back then in the Prophet Muhammad's time, the companions' time, and the tabi'een time, the tabi'een, etc., etc. There's plenty of people who understand the religion. But we're in a time now in which there are very few people who are fuqaha, who actually understand the religion according to its primary sources, according to its fundamental principles. It's very few people that actually understand the religion. But there are plenty and overwhelmingly majority of people that are teaching and giving khutbah, not even teaching, I'm not saying teaching, excuse me, but giving khutbah from the minbar or from whatever place. If you ask them a question about the religion, they can't give you an intelligent answer. And if they give you an answer, most times there will be intellectual dishonesty within that answer. Right? And at this time in which we live, knowledge is greater than action. For everybody. Today times you have people pressing and pushing action. Become hufaz and learn Arabic and, you know, speak Arabic to me. I don't want, brother, we speak English here. It's no reason to speak Arabic here. To know Arabic is something different. To speak it to somebody that's trying to learn the deen or learning the deen, if you're not in that circle in which Arabic is being spoken as a predominant language, say in certain classes you might be taking, and everyone is commanded or compelled to speak Arabic there and to facilitate learning, then yes, do it there. But on certain forums, guys are asking brothers to speak Arabic for no other reason than to try to say that I speak Arabic. And when you speak in Fusha, when Fusha isn't even spoken nowadays, right? Unless it's like on a TV program or something like that. So knowledge nowadays should be the primary thing we should be doing. That should be our primary interest now, is knowledge. In order to increase in knowledge, we must be sincere in our search for knowledge. We must also respect knowledge and give knowledge its due, right? As opposed to what we do nowadays. What we do nowadays, in which we give no respect to knowledge. For example, when I say people that give no respect to knowledge, people think that following the Quran and Sunnah is picking up the Quran and picking up a book of hadith. Finding something in the Quran in which it says to do this or that. Then finding some hadith that says do this or that. And then try to combine them. That's following Quran and Sunnah, brother. It says this in the Quran, say that in the hadith. follow Quran and Sunnah. You ain't following the Quran and Sunnah. What? It's not in Bukhari, brother. It's not Sahih. That's not simple as that. Bukhari might contain 2,000 hadith. So what? Everything in Bukhari is not to be followed. There are methodologies in which you say Khabarul Ahad is not taken. Singularity of hadith aren't taken. Even if it comes from a trustworthy source. But methodology says that they might take that. Another methodology say they aren't taking that because they have certain principles in which they stick to, in which they follow as a graded methodology to obtain the goal. The dubur. That thing that's at the end of the search. You got to understand, for mujtahid is one who works hard. He works hard to obtain the ruling. He doesn't stop or stand still. He works hard to get to the end of it. Not, oh, I picked up the Quran, I picked up this, and boom, I got the solution right here. It ain't that simple, it ain't that easy. That took you 10 minutes. It took you 10 minutes to figure that out, which 9 times out of 10 you're probably wrong. Because anyone that goes according to your own opinion about the Quran, right? And Allah and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said what? مَقْعَدُهُ مِنَ النَّارِ, right? And he take a seat in the hellfire. Speaking about something that doesn't concern you, right? So that's one of our problems. You know what I mean? We're not giving respect to the hard work and sacrifice and serious implementation that was required for these scholars to reach that level of ijtihad. And we haven't even reached the level to be considered imam. And I'm not talking about like Imam Abu Hanifa, not a title like that, because he was Imam al-Azam. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about imam in a sense that you can lead the salah. A lot of brothers can't lead the salah.
It's interesting you say that, man. I'm gonna jump in on that.
You ask a brother, he's gonna tell you, yeah, right? Because he can probably recite the Quran, and you know what I mean, and he might know the positions.
Nah.
But the mistakes that's made, many people don't understand just the rulings don't touch the sahih.
Exactly. Exactly.
Some of the rulings go on the cleanliness, how you clean yourself, what breaks wudu, what doesn't break wudu, what makes wudu effective, what makes wudu defective.
But that's one of the biggest issues, and this is in order to establish what we're discussing with regard. It's really with youth and everybody overall. But what's happening is with the youth and being neglected. Like I mentioned before, we're giving them basketballs and controllers and stuff. I don't have problem with the recreational play, but that shouldn't be their primary focus. That's not the only solution, because when we decide we want to involve them, when you're saying youth, you want to involve them. You're trying to involve them now at the age of 40.
Right.
Like, you missed that train already. You had this young boy since he was like 7 years old on up, and now you're trying to include him at 40.
Mm-hmm.
You have to begin that at young, and in the foundation, the beginning of this foundation is education. Now, some of our elders and some of us, we fell into leadership by default. And so one of the things, the primary objective, at least I make this as, as a leader in the community, I make this my primary focus, is one of the things. I'm not this guy that can solve the world's problems. Shoot, I could barely handle what we got. But however, one of the things that an Amir, a leader, has to do is make sure that education is there, because we have, 5 kulliyat, some scholars say six faculties that the Sharia came to preserve, right? And the very first one is hifdul deen, the preservation of the deen. And when that becomes paramount and is primary to the people, that's something that's missing. We don't, how can I say it? We don't go after Islam and learn Islam as if we're trying to preserve and put it into practice. And and I'm saying this generally, but not generally, right? We don't go after it in that manner. Some of us go after it in a selfish state, like, oh, well, you ain't gonna study. I'm just worried about me and my family. I've been through that era of the Hijra fever, right? The Hijra fever, yo, I'm going to get this deen. Me and my family, I gotta save myself. Right? No problem. But then when you come back, you forgot about your children. And a lot of brothers, and there's a lot of brother situation. You the good Muslim brother, right? And you may have children prior to Islam or after or from another marriage. You're packing up, leaving with your current family, and you leave behind your children from your divorced wife or your children from your baby mama, and so on and so forth. And then what happens? They don't get that same guidance you got because you picked up that guidance and took it somewhere overseas, and now you living overseas somewhere, and you talking your son every here and there. Meanwhile, he out here drilling, right? This is what we run back into. And so the cycle is already set up. If you're a black male from the age of like 9 years old till about 32, you have a bullseye on your back. You either supposed to be one or two places. You either supposed to be dead or in prison. You ain't supposed to be out here contributing and competing in the market. That's like a esoteric, type of thought, like wishful thinking, a fantasy almost for you to be living at post 33 years old, doing well for yourself. When I'm saying doing well, meaning covering the basic necessities of life, right? That's a dream. So when you get most men, and you got to understand, some of our men come from that, are influenced by that. So when they're 30, 33, 34 years old, they got a good job, they got their wife and their kids, they act like they made it to Jannah already. So what goes on in the masjid ain't really my business. I just go there to pray. I don't really care. Right? So this is why we keep starting over. There's a process. Every pharaonic system, every system that's modeled after Pharaoh has one objective. Yadhabihim abnaihim, to slaughter them boys. Right? To slaughter the boys. Yastahi ala nisaihim, and elevate and raise the women, empower the women, and amputate these boys. You killing them by the droves. So if you have if you black in America or Latino, and you have a young male from the age about 9 years old up until 32, you only supposed to be dead or in jail. And if you make it through the market, you might fall under the third category, the third category, new category. We talking about this morning, Solly. That's the homosexuality category. That's where your men is supposed to be. Because when you do that, you don't have to worry about the oppressed becoming knowledgeable and doing anything. Even if you look at it, the war between the Muslims, the internal war, right? We kind of like get compartmental type of ideology, right? Now, in this, I'm not throwing any shade. I'm just a person that always speak objectively, right? But the war that you got going on, we got a Mexican standoff war, right? Now, you got on one side, you got Ahl Sunnah on this side. On the other side, you got Ahlul Bid'ah wa Firqa, right? And the most famous Ahlul Bid'ah wa Firqa today is the Salafiyah movement, right? That's the most prominent. They stole all your youth. You know why they took all your youth? Because they took and spread the deen while we were too busy trying to chase the American dream, right? They put it inside your prisons. Most people
I was just about to say that they attacked the prisons. They went. They capitalized off everything. They capitalized off everything in every situation that came in.
Check this out. Guess where else they put it at? In your books. Because most people take their Islam from books. When people want to get right, watch Ramadan. I watch it. I know it's different in different cities. The experience is different. But I know in my city right here where we live at, every Ramadan, most people fell off. They want to get back on. They be like, yo, let me go get some books, right? You meet a sister. You're talking to a sister. She like, yo, I just started covering again. And she be like, oh, okay, all right, cool. Now you get her started learning. Then midway into getting the learning before, right as y'all about to get married,
Then she's like, look, I'm gonna go buy this book, buy that book, buy this book, buy that book. Well, look, guess what's happening? Those books are spewing and educating. They have an objective, right? They're not written like when you have books like, I'm gonna name a few books just for the audience. If you're not familiar with them, I try to give you a little brief background, right? You have what was the book you was teaching the other day, Solly? By Imam Nawawi, the Maqasid, right?
Al Maqasid.
You have the Maqasid. You have the Akhdari, right? The Maqasid is a primer Shafi book written by Imam Nawawi, right? You have the Akhdari is a primer. The Mukhtasar is a Mukhtasar Akhdari. It's a primer's book written by Imam Abdul Rahman al-Akhdari. The like basically a summary of the fiqh of Imam Malik, and of course it's covering just fiqh ibadat and adab in the beginning, right? What's one of the primer Hanafi books? Traditional one, or even contemporary. With the contemporary one, what's the name of that one that
Well,
they give to everybody?
It depends on where you got it from. Ta'limul Haq is one.
Ta'lim al-Haq. There you go. That you ain't had to go no further. That was the one I was trying to think of. That's a primer's book. And all when I'm saying primers, they're teaching you wudu, what breaks wudu, what invalidates wudu, right? All of these things. Now, you don't have to, those aren't, they're not like, it's not like it's revelation. You have to study those books and nothing else at all. The purpose of those books, right, are written so that a person can get a starting point, a beginner's basis, solid knowledge. It don't matter. Imam Nadir could write a book and call it the Mukhtasar Nadir, right? If he wanted to, as long as it's coming from that, it's teaching that, and it's connected back to one of the four imams, that book is solid, right? This is where we're falling short. So when most people are picking up books, women, they shop in the category, and the market is aimed at them like this. It's aimed at them like this. When most women that fell off Islam or just want to strengthen their Islam, what's usually the title of the book that they get? It usually starts with one title, one word before the title starts. Before you get to the title, is what? Women's Kether wa Kether wa Kether, the woman's book on such and such. Now, when it comes to fiqh ibadat, she ain't even really paying attention to that. She'll read a book by the sheikh, the Islamic rulings on the haid, on menstruation. No problem with that. I'm not saying that there's a problem with it, but also in those same books that I mentioned before, the Akhdari and all that, they also have the rulings on haid in there as well, on menstruation, right? And so my case in point is that your knowledge is put in a box, right? Then you start hearing the rhetoric. When you start looking into the rhetoric, you start looking into these past scholars, and there's no problem with that. But for some of us, our mind gets stuck in one area, right? Like for instance, most people know very little information about the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Why? Because he's not on a television show. He's not mentioned on a television show. He's not mentioned often in rap music, right? He's not in your everyday history books, and he's not in your newspaper. So therefore, you know nothing about him, right? They just be like, I know that Allah is Allah and Muhammad is the last of the prophets, and that's it. Now, if you're not certain and you don't have no knowledge of Islam, guess what? You'll start thinking that Muhammad is still a prophet. You'll probably still think he's a prophet. You see what I'm saying? As long as it got the name Muhammad. Because why? Because people aren't learning, and there's no they're not learning in a methodical way, in a system, right? So you're talking about this with adults. Now imagine this with young children. All you're doing is just shoving Pokemon down his face, Coco Melon, Baby Shark, and it just goes, and the list goes on, because there's always a cartoon to come take the child's mind away from reaching reality.
Forgive me, brothers. Let me cut us off. The brother Asim Abdul Rashid, he passed.
Imam Asim now.
Imam Asim passed. So please, everyone who's watching, offer dua for the brother.
No, definitely.
A great foundation of the city of Philadelphia, and in the surrounding communities there. He was the first one who told me about, listening to them, that it was a Jamaat in my city, and I never ever knew that. And in Paris, this is something that I wanted to bring back because of that man stating that. So please offer dua for him, inshallah.
SubhanAllah. So yeah, so you have this has to be This has to be established to keep our youth involved, right? So so these kind of things have to be set up. These type of curriculums. One of the things is I remember one year, I think it was in the summertime. Malik, you was there. We were having all summer. We focused on Arabic, right? Primers and beginners, right? And I had one of my sons. I think at the time he might have been 13, right? I used to have my son teach a couple of sisters, right? And I used to focus on some of the brothers, and other brothers would help out as well. This is how you involve the youth, right? Have them involved. You're engaged in learning. The one and where I get my inspiration of this from is two things. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Balighu anni walau ayah," right? Convey for me, even if it's only one ayah. And this is how Islam began to spread. It's how Islam began to spread. Me, our people, we didn't know a whole lot, but we get out there and be like, you was out there talking about you was into the Trinity. They'd be like, man, listen, Allah is one. He said, Qul huwa Allahu ahad. You be like, I don't even know what he's saying, but that joint sound deep. Right? And Jesus ain't God. And then it's just like go in from there. And you just like, yo, this is how what caught my attention about, to bring me to Islam. Right? So these type of things, these things happen. This is what draws people in. So you see the reality of that statement. A lot of people is not gonna, they're not gonna they're not going to how can I say it? Exceed their limits, excel their limits of knowledge sometimes, right? Some people might, but not every person is going to do that. They're going to stop at what they stop at. But then we keep, the second thing I'm going to say, stay on track. The second thing, what inspired this is when you looked at Sheikh Usman Dan Fodio, Taqaddam Allah bi rahmati amin. He was raised from a young boy. He was groomed. By the time he was 19, 20 years old, he was out engaged in giving dawah, right? He was writing books. He was teaching people, right? Now, what happens with us in our thinking is we think, we're supposed to spend 30, 90 years, 80 years learning. The reality is you're always going to be learning until you hit the grave. There's no post grad and all of that stuff. You're going to be learning until you hit the grave. This is why I said we can better identify with the Sahabas. We can better identify why, because they established Islam, meaning that it came from they embraced Islam before their residence was Islamic, meaning their land, right? Their Islam was in their homes in the beginning. And then when they made a larger move on a larger scale, that's when they moved and pushed Islam even further, right? We can relate to that. I can't relate to, the likes of trying to be Ibn Taymiyyah, where I'm writing books in between Dhuhr and Asr and getting in prison, for spreading corrupt aqidah. I can't relate to that, right? But if you're under, these are people we be looking at. You be looking at them like, that's a hero. If you read read the history of some of these people, you be like, man, black people, we like only two types of scholars. Really, really one. A controversial one. Right? We love those controversial people. If he has a background, he's known for controversy. We don't even care what his controversy was. If controversy, it got him locked up, or if it got him in a fight, we love him. We're like, that's my man. He a fighter. You didn't know he was getting locked up for some corrupt aqidah. Right? You don't know that stuff. You be like, that's my man. A lot of times, too, give you two Sahabas. We mix up their character, right? We read about Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, right? Umar wasn't the guy that we think Umar was, right? Well, every time you read about Umar done choke somebody out, body slammed him, dragged him to the Prophet, say something like, if you tell, how do you verify hadith during the time of Umar? Listen, if you lying, we're going to beat you, right? If you lie, we find out that you lying on the message of Allah, we're going to beat you, right? And he sit him in front of other Sahabas, and he narrate, and they say, that's exactly what the Prophet said. That's how we got Sahih, right? Alhamdulillah for the scholars of hadith, because they made it easier for you now, right? But however, look at this. The person who we think Omar is actually Hamza. Hamza, right? The uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he found out Abu Jahl had struck the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with disrespect, that's how Hamza became Muslim. He came back from hunting lions. smack the flames out of them, and say, hey, look, now I'm on what Muhammad's on. Now y'all need to chill out. Now I'm not saying Omar wasn't like that. I'm just telling you the guy that we think it is. When Omar came to take Shahada, remember Omar was on his way to go kill the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? He had his sword on him. When they got the Baitul Akram, he pounding on the door. They said, yo, it's Umar ibn Khattab. And he got a sword with him, right? Hamza said, okay, alhamdulillah, let him in. If he's coming to take Shahada, we'll greet him. If he came in for anything other than that, we'll kill him with his own sword, right? So a lot of times we mix the two of them up, because when you start reading about Omar and reading about, you know, the persona of who Omar not only was it, and there's a reason why the Prophet ﷺ said about Omar, right? When Shaitan see Omar, he scatters and go the opposite way. Why is that? Because of his yaqeen, his certainty. This Shaitan has no business with you, right? Not because he's big and tough. Shaitan has no business with you when you have yaqeen. Think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in the Quran, إنما المؤمنون الذين إنما المؤمنون الذين إنما المؤمنون الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله ثم لم يرتابوا, right? The believers are the one who believe in Allah and His messenger. After that, they don't have no doubt. The more the weaker your iman is, the more doubt, the more Shaitan has his way with you, right? But the stronger your yaqeen is, you have no doorway for Shaitan. Our youth is missing that. Everything that they listen to, that we allow them to watch and listen to, it steals at their iman. It chips at their iman, right? Think about it. One of the first ways we neglect our youth, we don't keep them in the ranks for salah. We don't keep them in the prayer ranks, but we let them go to the malls. We let them go to the movies. We let them go shopping. We let them go to the game. Some Muslims let them go to the proms, right? Go to the school dance. And the list goes on, right? But when it comes to the masjid, it's like, right? You don't even make that. Let's say you're not even a crafty individual where you say, yo, listen, I'll let you go see that your new Spider-Man movie tonight, but you gotta make sure you make Isha in Jama'ah. You gotta make sure you're at the masjid, right? You know, one of the things that I love about when you
Spider-Man out of every movie. Don't be a hater that we went.
Yeah, that's right. Y'all left me.
You ain't show up.
He took a shot.
Y'all left me. But look, though, right? So one of the things I learned from when you study, West African history, Islamic history, their culture. One of the things that they always done was that they used to take their young boys after they reached about the age between 7 and 10. Now they were always sent them to the madrasa, but they used to the fathers used to always take the boys out of the house to pray Maghrib and Isha in the ranks, right? One of the things I'll say this about Imam Asim, rahmatullahi alayhi, right? And he had an impact. I don't know if there's a man that met Imam Asim, you either love him or hate him, right? You either did one of the two, But his sincerity was there. But one of the things he always used to say, he used to be like, y'all brothers got to get it together, right? Because a munafiq, his hardest time that he had is praying in the masjid, Fajr and Isha. That's our call, brothers. Y'all need to be in the salat. Y'all need to be in these ranks. And one thing I can attest to, if what I'm saying right now, you seeing young boys in the ranks at Masjid Mujahideen. That's one thing you did say. You can say a whole lot of things, but you can never discredit that. I done seen some of their grandsons in the prayer rug. Some of their grandsons been in my classes. You done seen it. So the thing is to create a methodology. You have to create a methodology. Now, and have things of learning. You have to have this. We're losing our youth because we're not giving them anything, right? And then we got the war going on. How many lives you're able to teach a child that avoid, we don't go to the NOI ain't Muslim, we don't mess with the whole Wahhabi creed. You teach your children this and make sure that they understand why, right? But you still got to focus on salat. They need to know the rules to prayer, right? They need to know the rules of paying zakat. The reason why zakat hasn't been instituted yet, because one, the people are negligent of the basic knowledge. when you talk about zakat, it's always fatwa based knowledge of zakat, right? Always fatwa based. It doesn't talk about it. It doesn't go into it, and nobody gets past the nisab. They start be like, well, because we got paper dollars, and and the price of gold, and yeah, I mean, we're not even making an effort to do it. We just like automatically say that. I even heard one brother say, we talk about a style, how well, what's the way we could rectify this? Well, Yusuf Qaradawi wrote an excellent book on this. Yusuf Qaradawi don't live here. He don't live here. What are we gonna do? How are we gonna do this? We're gonna keep talking about paper money? Like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna do this? Yeah. You see what I'm saying? So, but we rely on Yusuf Qaradawi with that, but then everybody will eat haram meat based off of Yusuf Qaradawi and other scholars' fatwas, but you don't want to try to put nothing together to establish zakat, right? So back to my point, setting up a methodology. When you listen, zakat in and of itself, learning the rules to zakat is prepping. Look at all 5 pillars of Islam. It is prepping you for leadership, whether you want to be a leader or not. Sometimes leadership falls on a person by default. Everybody can't remain ignorant of the Sharia and be like, well, you speak the most eloquent speech. You ain't no other qualification. You just speak good. No. Does he know the rules of the salat? Right? Does he know the rules of tahara? Does he know the conditions of prayer? Each one of the 5 pillars, when you learn them and learn them properly, it sets you up for leadership. It sets you up for leadership. One, when you learn the proper akida, sets you up for leadership. Why? Because you automatically become a dai. You become a caller to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether people want to recognize you or not, you immediately become a caller to Allah. No, Allah Ta'ala doesn't resemble His creation, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll be able to begin. Allah Ta'ala existed before time. Allah Ta'ala is ongoing after time. After the demise of creation, Allah Ta'ala will still exist because Allah is not like His creation, right? You can continue to go on. You'll be calling people to that. You'll tell them about the Nabuwah, about the prophets and messengers. You'll tell them about the Sami'at, about paradise, hellfire. Tell them about the Barzakh, what goes on in the grave. This sets you up to do these things. Then you move over to Salat, Tahara, right? After he learns about the prayer, Sajdatul Sahu, right? The prostration of forgetfulness. Now you can lead the prayer. Why is that? Because now it ain't just because you got the best recitation in the most Quran, but the fiqh, the understanding. Now I'll give you a short story. I digress, and I'm gonna jump right back on. I promise, and then I'm gonna get out the way, let everybody else speak. There was a master that one time, they didn't have an imam. They were imamless. And that's the other thing, too. We got to stop trying to model our community after the immigrants. They have the board of committee, that board of director stuff. Okay, that's fine. Organizational structure. The problem where it becomes problematic is when they're mad with the imam, they get rid of him. So the imam, he's imam al-ratib. It's absolutely permissible, but you still need an amir, right? You got the imam who leads the prayer, and yes, he's expendable. But if you notice, you spend most masters that hire imam, they go longer without an imam more than they do with one. So they almost run the thing like an NBA team, like like the Knicks. You go years without a superstar, and you feel you building up all your assets, and now you want to go and trade all these traffic for the best superstar, some old injured player, and then he ain't playing like you want him to. Now you want to trade him. This is how we treat the imams. These imams are rotten. Meanwhile, the people on the board, they the cigarette smugglers, the bootleg liquor store Arabs, and so on and so forth, right? But I digress from that. But anyway, so this master, they didn't have imam. So brother, when he was leading the prayer, don't get me wrong, this brother's recitation was on point, right? On point. So now outside he makes a mistake in the prayer. He forgot something, right? He forgot something in the prayer. Brother's like, subhanallah, right? He kept right on praying. Now this happened twice. These 2 things happened in this master. He ended the prayer. Brothers told him what he did. Basically, he ignored it, walked off. Everybody sitting there like, well, what are we supposed to do? Like what's supposed to go on? I'll give you the other situation. Second time, same master, no imam. Different brother, his recitation was good, right? Going in there, going to make prayer. We praying behind the brother leading the prayer. I guess he must have broke wudu or something. He left out, right? left to go make wudu, whatever. He left off the salat, and everybody was just standing there. And then they began to talk. Yo, he broke the salat. What do we do? Brother, go ahead. Brother, no, man, I just walked off, prayed, and left. Right? This is important. How are you going to have a foundation, a place where you congregate at, and you don't have nobody in there that know how to step up and lead the prayer? Right? So these things, a lot of people want to be the muezzin.
Exactly what I was
saying. Exactly. And you'll have, and then this another thing, because you made me think of this. This is why I'm telling that story. So check this out, right? If you have a muezzin, the muezzin is supposed to be just as knowledgeable as the imam.
Not correct.
You got brothers who go up there and be Allahu Akbar, Allah, right? They want, because they've been practicing at home in the mirror. The other boy, he been practicing his recitation all night, but none of them know the rules of prayer. This is catastrophic, right? So this is why you'll find this collapse in our leadership. And the Prophet ﷺ, he talked about this in the hadith. He said, Ya'ati ala nas zaman. There'll come a time upon a people, la yabqa min al-islam illa ismuhu. There'll be nothing left as Islam except his name. And you're looking at it. The prayer, right? The zakat is not being collected. Ramadan is in the air, right? Because most of the time, most people start Ramadan. We don't even know if it's actually Ramadan or not, right? Very few people know. It's just like, I don't know. I mean, it's not upon the people, it's on the leadership. But who wants to keep living in limbo like this, right? And Hajj, we don't even think about Hajj no more, because once you start mentioning 5 digits versus 4, you start changing your mind about making Hajj. Like, man, that joint costs 10 bands, and I'm barely making it, paying $1,500 a month for rent, right? So therefore, la yabqa min al-Islam illa ismuhu. It'll be nothing left of Islam except his name, right? So it's our responsibility, as somebody say you sound like Luther. It's our responsibility to build that legacy and pass it down to our youth, right? We should be training our youth to the point, have one of them where they set up a system where the young man who learns his Fara'ain, memorize some Quran, and where he's the muazzin. So when the imam isn't there, he leads the prayer, right? So these type of things are very important in order to continue, and pass down to the legacy to the youth. So I'm gonna step back. Y'all go ahead and do your thing, inshallah.
Hey, I want to add though, right? About the no, like say for instance, like, so I don't know if I'm sure you probably read this book. Most of you brothers probably read it, Ta'aleem wa Muta'allim by Imam Soullutionz. I think this when I first read this book, years ago, of course. I first read this book. It's such an applicable book to the time, right? So like we was talking about the path of learning, the graded path of learning. What Tarbiyah is nurturing and bringing up. Tarbiyah is not just teaching, it's nurturing. It's from the beginning, it's from seed to harvest, right? And he said one of the problems, Imam Soullutionz said one of the problems is, that we see is that people who consider themselves to be tulab al-ilm, you will see them doing things or giving, like I said, giving khutbah and different talks or whatever, but then in salat, they don't know how to make salat, except the outward show of salat. The rulings involved is different. Anybody can stand there and watch a person make salat and be like, oh, I know how to do this. All right? You can see the person stand, you recite, especially if it's like a Maghrib or Isha or Fajr or something like that. He did this, he bent down when he said Allahu Akbar after he did some recitation. He said, Sami Allahu liman hamidah. He stood up and went back down. You know what I mean? Anybody can catch the sequence and what's said outwardly or inwardly or whatever. But the problem is, hold up, computer over here running mad. The problem is that we don't take the correct path to obtain that knowledge. And one of the things that Imam al-Zarnuji said is reason being, he says, أخطأوا طرائقه وتركوا شرائطه وكل من أخطأ الطريق ضل فلا ينال المقصود. All right, so he says that, you know, people that do this, they make mistakes in the path towards knowledge, and they leave off the condition, the precondition, the shariat of knowledge. He said, and anyone who makes a mistake in the tariqah, the path to which to be taken to obtain knowledge, dalla, he's misguided. And never فلا ينال المقصود. He never reaches his target or the goal. All right? And that's the problem now, is that we already don't know the path. And the path that most people take is the incorrect path, which lead to never reaching the goal. So now we just spinning and stuck in the mud, spinning our wheels, not going forward. And that's one of the problems, you know, when Allah says, when the Prophet ﷺ said, "Talabul ilmi faridatun ala kulli muslim wa muslima," man and woman. He intentionally says that because, you know, most of the time, the opposite is implied. Excuse me. In Arabic, you know, if we're talking about a group of people, I don't have to put the female or the female gender on that word, because it's implied. And when a female comes from a man, he could have said ala kulli muslim, and it would have been done. It's understood. It includes women too, right? But he said intentionally wa muslima, and women, indicating that it's not something that only men should be doing. Right? And then Imam Zarnuji also said that knowledge isn't fard on everyone. Excuse me. Every knowledge isn't fard on everyone. All knowledge, trying to learn everything, isn't fard on everyone. Becoming hafiz isn't fard on everyone. Becoming a muhaddith isn't fard on everyone. Everyone isn't supposed to be a sheikh. Everyone isn't supposed to be imam, ustad, amir, whatever you want to call yourself. Everyone isn't supposed to be that. That is not titles that everyone can obtain or should obtain, should I say. But understand this. He said also, and Imam Zarnuji said, this isn't in the beginning of the book. I ain't even touching into what's in the book about how to study and how to take knowledge and who to take knowledge from, how to study. I mean, different things and methods that he gives. He says that, you know, he says that, excuse me, it is far to seek the knowledge of your condition. He calls it ilmul hal. Right? And he says, أفضل العلم علم الحال وأفضل العمل حفظ الحال. The best of knowledge is the knowledge in which that's in your condition, right? Your condition in your life. That knowledge which best helps you in your life, your hal, your condition, your state. And he says the best action is the action that will protect that state, or to maintain that state, right? So, in other words, if you do not know the rulings of salah, that's ilmul hal. That's what that's what is fard upon you. Not learning about Imam Nawawi, not learning about Al Arsh Istawa, not learning about where Allah is at and which direction is he up, above, side, down, over top, under the throne, in the throne, sitting on it, or whatever. Subhanallah Rabbil Alameen. You know, Ta'ala Allah. It's not far on you because you won't be questioned about that. Allah has never once presented a question nor asked, nor has he ever said in the Quran nor through the Sunnah that you will be questioned about where he's at, his location. But you have a lot of people that this is a topic of debate. No, Allah says Allah Arsh Istawa. Huh? Allah says, you know, Allah fis sama. All right? But he says fis sama wal ard. So how can you be in the heavens and the earth?
That's funny. I had a debate with an Imam one time.
With stuff like that. Because you haven't followed what's necessary for you to know.
Imam, he was going on because he was one of them Hashwiya, you know, the stuffers. So he says, yeah, Allah, you know, Allah's in the heavens, Khalil. He's in the heavens. And he says, Qala Allahu Ta'ala, Allahu ma fis samawati. I said, finish ayat. What? Well, ma fil ard. Yeah, come on, I can't, like, seriously, stick to it. Allah's not like his creation. Stop it. Right?
Yeah.
He was just, you know, it was just, and you're right. People are, you know, they're not in there, and what's happening is spewing over to the common people. Like we had that was a disease here in Philly. That was like, I mean, like an epidemic.
It's epidemic. It used to be like in Islam, period. That unqualified.
No, I think it was worse at one point.
It's crazy here, Habibi. It's crazy here.
After the salams, a handshake.
It was an identification card. It was an identification card, right?
It was like an identification card. Where's Allah? You'd be like, what? I never heard nobody ever ask me that ever in my life until I moved to Philadelphia.
Right. It established where you go, who you sit with, and what scholars you take from. That's it. I know. So once you say, and you ain't even gotta say it in Arabic. He Allah's in the heavens. Okay, I see here.
Somebody like that. And I found this very interesting. I heard a scholar says this. I ain't gonna mention his name just because people don't like him, but whatever.
Then mention his name. That's what time we on. That's what time we on. We gangsters here.
A person
who is it, Sheikh? Who is it? Who is Imam Nadir?
Sheikh Hamza.
Who is it?
So he says this, right? A person asking, "Where's Allah?" The first question should be response is, first off, it's a bad question. We'll just say that. But where are you? First. A person can't answer that question. I can't tell you where I'm at. That sounds crazy, but it's real. We can't tell nobody where we are. Okay, I'm in. I can tell you my address where I'm at. Okay, it's in Columbus, Ohio. Okay, that's in the state of Ohio. Okay, where's Ohio? It's on the United States. Okay, where's the United States? You know, it's in North America, on the continent of North America. Okay, where's the North American continent? On this side of the earth, this hemisphere gives the coordinates. Okay, where's the earth? It's in space. Well, where's space? Exactly. We don't know where space is. You can't give no coordinates for space. You can't get no coordinates for space. Supposedly, the furthest someone
you got a lot of people thinking with that one. We're gonna get a lot of questions in the comments.
The furthest person that any human went from Earth is the moon. Of course, that's what they say. So, who mapped the universe to say where we at actually? According to science, the Earth, the universe is expanding. So it's getting bigger. So where's that at? According to science, we know that everything has limits. Where's the limits? We don't know. We can't tell you because I don't know where I'm at. So how you gonna tell me where Allah is at? You know, one interesting thing about like space, there's no up or down in space, if that makes sense, because there's nothing to relate to up or down, the coordinates. It's not like Earth. When we stand, we have gravity, and when we stand up, we know up is above our head. We can say that with respect to us, our body in space. We say anything above us is up, but once you rotate and turn, now up is over there. So it's no, you can't make that coordinate system work, right? Because you have to relate it to something else. The only thing you have related to is Earth, but there's no that we know that there's stuff out there just by the stars. But so how are you going to orient yourself? You know, you don't in space, you don't even lose orientation if you're upside down because there's no up, there's no gravity, there's nothing that's pushing you, that's weighing on you to make you disoriented if you're upside down, supposedly, but you're not upside down, really. So again, no one can tell us where we at.
Listen, bro. You ever read the Wahhabi concept on Alua? On the Alua? That's when you dig deep enough. This whole argument about where's the law and all that, it leads you to that. They say Alua, and what you just described is what they say. Their scholars write it in their books. It's not up, it's not down, but Allah is looking over all of creation. They say it's a locate. This statement is kufr. They say that Allah has a location and it's uncreated like Him. Like, as if like a figurine, them little action figures we used to get. You had a toy. I used to have one of the wrestlers. I think it was Junkyard Dog, right? And he had like he was on a little stand. It was like a piece of a wrestling ring, And this is what they're promoting. So they don't even understand the limit where to stop at. And on top of this, and just to add this, and I promise I'm gonna be quiet, and you can probably close out soon. Because look at it, and this one thing, as Black Americans, Black American Muslims, right? Historically, anthropologically, the majority of the indigenous slaves that was captive and brought to America, they were Muslim, right? Is anthropological artifacts here. There's evidence. It's in the Smithsonian Institute, all these different places, right? They stripped Islam from the people. This is known. You got the white Jesus that you got today because they gave you Bible. You couldn't even read anything other than the Bible. Many of our Caribbean brothers and sisters and Latinos, they were freed from slavery because they had to embrace the Catholic religion or whatever Christian version of Christianity in order to get their freedom. So when you become Muslim now, Black American, you turn the tide now, Black American as a group, we done been through every deviant group that done came through the channel, the side of this planet Earth. We done had everyone. We done had a man. They said a man was Allah incarnated. We done had the false prophets. We done had the guys, the guys that said, Allah's everywhere, Allah's on a chair, Allah's this, He resembles creation. You done had that. And now I believe we're at the phase of extremists, the muta'assib, the extremists. And what I mean by extremism is that they're focused on one point of Islam where you'll never ever establish the rest of the deen, because they'll invalidate the rest because only that one point is important, right? We have to open our eyes. Islam empowers you. You don't want to sit around Ahlul Bid'ah, then you have to gain control of your area to push Ahlul Bid'ah out. Then you won't have to worry about them.
All right.
When you're in this big open forum, now you're forced to accept them. It's just like it's the same way they forced you to embrace homosexuality. Everybody's embracing and accept the same thing. But when you have control of what you're doing, you can push that stuff outside your walls, right? You can't gain mental peace. You can't gain serenity, and this is why a lot of our brothers in the cities where they have a big majority of massages, you know, usually the massages that are built, operated, and populated by Black Americans, it's usually a lot of back and forth, jadal, a lot of argumentation, disputation, and then they run off to the foreigner massages with nobody knowing immigrants, and they like, yo, it's so peaceful here. We have to create those peaceful environments, and the best way to create those peaceful environments is establish a methodology, a curriculum. Stick to it, teach it, people learn it, make sure that they're educated. This is the only way we're going to pass. This will push out a lot of the chaos. Do you realize that our children that go to public schools, right? If we teach our children, educate our children, and give them that identity that they're Muslim first, right? That, you know, the influence that they'll have on the other children in schools. At one point in time here in Philadelphia, they used to always have a Muslim from outside, come in, you know, either educate the youth or lead them in prayer, right? Excuse them so they can go to Juma. And if they couldn't leave the building to go to Juma, they would dedicate a room for them to pray while they were at school. You don't have that no more. And part of these killings now, they're not even, like I told you, that age group, 9 to 32, the ages that you look at, all these 500-600 people dying annually, their ages are starting at like 11 on up. Some of them are younger than that. So, you know, now that I'm gonna stop, inshallah, because we got like another 15 minutes. I don't want to go too long, inshallah. So y'all brothers go ahead, and then we'll close out.
I'm with you. Unless you got something to say over there, Majid, Abdul Majid.
No, alhamdulillah. No, it's fine. You know, we touched the topics. You know, I'm happy with, you know, what we spoke about, mashallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward both of you brothers. Yo, we would like to answer some questions though. We can answer what, about 5, 10?
All right, I think this is for even a good.
Why can't it just depends on the time of the day actually, but generally I go to Masjid Ibn Taymiyyah. It's not a Salafi masjid. Surprisingly, it's not a Salafi masjid. Most of them, it's a Somali masjid. Most of them Shafi'i, according to, you know, the people I deal with that's there. If I'm not there, I go to Masjid Abu Bakr, which is again a Somali masjid, or, you know, I go to a couple of them. You know, I like to move around because, you know, you meet people in different masjids. And then of course Masjid Al-Nur, where you got the Indo-Pak, which is a very expensive masjid, nice, and I go up there every now and again, but not generally. Generally, I'm probably at Ibn Taymiyyah masjid.
I think it was just confirming basically what we were saying, that they used to give us a lot of time to leave for Juma when in high school, and they let us pray back in our classrooms.
Alhamdulillah. Any more?
Another comment, brother said, years ago, a Saudi prince was able to go to Russia's space station and was about to perform salat. And he would have astronauts call Saudi Arabia for the direction of Qibla. And the sheikh told him, "You are in space. Your boat is constantly rotating as Earth. Just pray. Allahu Alam."
Right, but that's another thing. See that right there, that type of logic. What are you calling them for? A person should be able to. You live across the street from, yeah, he was on Mock Road, right. That's right on Mock Road. Yeah, he's like Mock Road. A person should not. He should be able to determine Qibla. A person should be able to determine Qibla on his own. He doesn't need to call Saudi, "Hey, where the Qibla at?" Man, you know where you at better than I do. But nowadays, people look to Saudi for what? Like, y'all look to Saudi for Ramadan now. The start of Ramadan. Right? How do you look to Saudi for the start of Ramadan? It's about seeing the moon. And they on the other side of the earth.
And Saudi is factually
Saudi Arabia about seeing around the moon of Ramadan.
And Saudi now, they're going off of estimated times now too. They're not really citing the moon anymore. They're going off of estimated times per year.
And,
so, you know,
what I follow, it's impermissible to follow somebody that got a ruling such as that, because guess what? Saudi is too far. And Imam Malik said that, you know, you can, you know, the distance is from Medina, he said, up to Khurasan. right? Khorasan is like Afghanistan now. I think it's in that area, right? We further than that link. It's like 3,000 miles or whatever it is. We further than that from Saudi. So we here in America, we can't take their ruling. It's impermissible to force to follow that ruling. Right? So we should be establishing situations in which people that can actually be able to observe and sight the moon as a jama'ah, because we know that the evidence of one person or two people nowadays isn't enough. It should be 15, 20 brothers and sisters going out looking for the hilal for the start of Ramadan in the community, and we can announce that as a jama'ah, because the jama'ah is better than one person, and jama'ah can act as, because the Prophet Muhammad said, jama'ah can act as a qadi, can act as a judge for the community. Not just one person if they don't have the knowledge, but a group can act as a judge, come into a collective agreement that this is what we saw.
We have any more questions?
I don't have any more questions. This brother said, "What an archaeologist, I found the answer funny. But if in space passing you at high speed, right? So the point in that would be pray towards the earth. Stop making it so difficult. It's just, I mean, if you're going to pray, if you it is, even though it doesn't apply to most of us, again, because most of us we'll never be out of space. But just logically, pray towards the earth. We know it's moving too fast for you to even try to, you know what I mean, understand what Allah said in the Quran is jihad. Right? It's the jihad. Jihad is like a direction. It's not saying directly at it. I mean, if you're standing in the Masjid al-Haram, yes, pray towards the Qibla directly. But if you're in America, or you in Canada, or you in UK, pray towards that general direction of which we know Mecca will be, here in America will be east. Some say northeast, right? Some say, oh, you take the shortest distance, which would be due north over the, you know what I mean? They call it the Great Circle or something like that. But you got to understand, that's just, we complicate things. Pray towards that. This how it was explained to me, I mean, from Sheikh Ayub. So just pray in that direction. He gave me an explanation of the jihad. You know, what jihad meant. It's a direction. It's not like a point that you're praying to. It's just praying that direction. It's solitude, right? It's unity that we're showing. It's not, you know. And then, like, if you didn't pray in the right direction out of your estimation, guess what? Your prayer is still sound. It doesn't break your prayer, right? We know that the Qibla was changed right in the middle of Salah. And the Prophet Muhammad turned around. They turned around. Not the Prophet, but the people turned around when they came and said, now you pray towards Mecca. They was praying towards Jerusalem usually, they turned back around. Now, during Salah, it didn't invalidate your prayer because you prayed in the wrong direction mistakenly. Because it doesn't, at the end of the day, that doesn't, unintentionally, it doesn't kill your Salah. But this is, you know, I was just talking, going off on something. Askia, I was taught to cite moon each month and count. University in Michigan 42 years ago. I also determined Salat time by shadowing. Yes, that's how you're supposed to do it. That's how I learned how to determine time. Salat. I can determine the Salat. Most people should be able to determine Salat without a phone or time or timesheet or whatever. You should be able to pick up and know how to determine Salat time by the shadow length and measure it appropriately and correctly. Most of North America is southeast of Mecca. I understand your point about nitpicking on direction. It doesn't. At the end of the day, we praying to Allah. We're not praying to the Kaaba. That's just direction. We turn. We don't have to turn direction. Yeah. It's the direction, right?
It depends on your methods. Some methods are real.
I mean, some methods are real strict about it. I'm just I understand that, but first is if you don't know the argument, don't make it an argument, right? And when I say argument, I'm talking about know the actual ruling, right? Because a lot of people say, for instance, in the Salah, a lot of people don't know for Malikis, and some are different. But it's in the Hanafi school also that, you know, the sajda sahu, whether it's a qabli or a ba'di, whether you pray you make the two sajda sahu, the two prostrations of forgetfulness before the salam or after the salam. If you don't know that ruling, right? In Maliki school, according to one of the scholars, I can't directly, I think it's Asbab or someone, has said that, you know, for the majority of people, just pray the Ba'di and it will suffice. Because people they forget the rulings, right? And they start, you start calling yourself waswasa in Salah.
Hmm.
If you don't know the rulings the best, you know, if you're not firm on those rulings, you start getting waswasa. Hey, should I pray before? Should I pray after? Why would I pray before? Because did I leave something out? Did I add something? Generally, ba'di would be because you added something. Generally, qabli would be because you forgot something. But, you know, then it gets muddled when it comes to recitation. If you recite it out loud in a silent prayer or recite it silent in an out loud prayer, it can be a jahab. So it depends, but it can get complicated sometimes. But that's why he said if you pray a ba'di, I mean, it's fine. For general people, if you know the ruling, pray it as it should be prayed. The masjid, such a sahw. So yeah, it gets nitpicking, but at the same time, for the general people, I wouldn't give the ruling that, you know what I mean, if you're not a true student of knowledge, I would just say pray the ba'di. If you made a mistake, make such the ba'di. You know what I mean, ba'di. Make it after the salam, because it gets complicated sometimes. But that goes with graded studying, you know, not learning everything, trying to learn everything at once, but learning one thing first as a stepping stone to move to the next thing. Use that as a stepping stone to move to the next thing. One thing I learned in my learning is that we add things gradually. You know, in the beginning, it might be just about Salah. Then he might add another ruling in there about Salah in the next text. Then the next text might add another ruling about Salah. And you'd be like, dang, why ain't you put these? He said all of these, but now you done added two more. Well, you didn't need those at that time because they were less important. But now it's appropriate to give you that because you already found it. You already grounded yourself in what was before it. But these are things we need to understand, inshallah ta'ala, as we move in our studies and just trying to understand how Islam works for us as individuals.
Alhamdulillah. Sometimes we can't see who's the person talking, so forgive us if we don't mention you by name. We can't say Facebook user.
Yeah, that's what it says. Like, but this person says, but the Maliki Madhab, I congratulate you on learning others, but have you finished learning Maliki Madhab? We don't go to the end of it. Just learning the Salat and Maliki Madhab, there's other things.
Yeah.
Maliki Madhab.
You know what's most popular when a lot of people are learning you know, attribute Maliki fiqh is usually most things with Islam is usually an outward thing for us, you know, meaning with Maliki you identify because you're praying sadl, your arms is down, not crossed across your chest, or you do one taslim versus two. Right. You know, outside of that, you know, that there's no other identifying factor. If you're Hanafi, you identify because your hands are low in the navel, but there are others with other madhabs, you know, that pray in the same manner as well. But a lot of people just attribute that automatically to Hanafi. Right.
Also, so, this statement here, you know, I would like to ask the Facebook user, whatever your name is, forgive us, that what is you know, where are you from? Because, you know, we have a subconscious thing here where, you know, that they force fed that taking from all the madhabs is good, right? So taking from here is like fatwa shopping. Let's say that fatwa shopping.
Yeah, and that's bad. That's very bad.
That's another discussion we can have. We can talk on that.
That's very dangerous. That in and of itself is dangerous. People warn against that. Fatwa shopping, going to this person and that person, trying to, But good scholars, if he found out about it, he'd tell him, don't do that. I mean, person should be able to tell. This sister Crystal asks about 2 rakats after prayer once you salam out for forgetfulness. It's not 2 rakat. And you don't do 2 whole rakat. After
it's
if you made a mistake in your prayer, after you make your salam, you will prostrate twice. So you say Allahu Akbar, you just go down into your prostration twice. You sit back up with Allahu Akbar, you say Allahu Akbar again, go down. You say Allahu Akbar, you sit back up, and then you make your tashahhud again, you salam out again. But that's for the
Maliki school.
That's for the Maliki school. Most of us.
That's for the Maliki school.
And again, like I said, it could be a qabli also.
It's different.
So it depends on your situation. Inshallah ta'ala tomorrow. Inshallah ta'ala tomorrow, for people that's on here, and I will also make a post. I will be starting the book Akhdari, Mukhtasar al-Akhdari by Abdul Rahman al-Akhdari. It's a book it's a primer on Maliki fiqh, but it's a primer on like the brother said, adab, and also it mentions some other obligations, but mostly it's about the prayer, salah, times of prayer, the nawaqid or the nullifiers of the prayer, etc., and those things which pertain to the prayer, like such as sahu, etc. We'll be starting tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala, at 8. We probably start at 8 p.m. Excuse me. And it will probably, inshallah, I'll try to keep it to a 1-hour class.
Inshallah, sometime tomorrow afternoon. I know we'll be doing. That's will be in. My schedule's all over the place. I'm in school, and sometimes on the weekend I got clinicals. So we'll be continuing that as well. And when is your class, Sally?
My class is on Fridays at 6 o'clock.
Friday, 6 o'clock. All right. So basically, I know, with us, Tajdir, Sunnah, and the brothers from the A team, you're gonna get at least a couple of the imams, madhabs being taught where you can learn your fundamentals. So, inshallah, keep following us. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You'll find us on there, inshallah. Hold on, there's one more comment, and I guess after that we'll close out, inshallah. Still studying Maliki, some Maliki with their arms folded. I'm from Detroit. Okay, Detroit. Imam Abdullahi, I'm the sister who sent you boots and stuff. Oh, okay, mashallah. I remember you. Nah, mashallah, alhamdulillah.
Was the boots nice? You giving that boots? The boots nice?
Mashallah.
I want to say about the folding of the arms. Understand, by the folding of the arms, it is the dominant position of the Malikis. So this is the agreed upon that it's the dominant position of the Malikis, right?
Yeah, now Boston.
The unfolded arms, the praying at the arms to the side. The folding of the arms is something done in a nafila salah. And if there's Malikis that's doing it with folded arms, perhaps they don't know that that's not the dominant opinion.
Oh, man, you better start a fight, man.
But that's not the dominant opinion. The dominant opinion is suddenly.
They gonna be coming for you, brother.
That's fine with me. I got my.
We got a group. No, I'm just saying though. You got
I can duck the move, baby. I ain't concerned.
You ever go to Maliki? You ever go to Maliki groups, the chats, the WhatsApp and YouTube? That's all they talk about. That and whether you should be Salafi or not. I mean, after you Salafi is just nonstop.
Yeah, I ain't gonna I'm gonna give you the evidence.
I went to masjid. I had to stop and pray once. I was looking at a car. Me and the brother Ramadan was together. Right story before we leave. And I went to masjid. What's the one on 67th Street? Woodland, 67th from Woodland. That's 67th, right? Ahl Hadith. So we had to stop there, right? So I had to leave the salat because they prayed. So in the Shafi school, we say Bismillah, reciting Al-Fatiha at any suwar in the beginning.
No.
So boom, I pray. I'm getting jiggy. It caused turmoil. They waited for the end of the salat. Sheikh Fawzan said so and so, so and so, so and so, so and so, so and so.
Gotta know your surroundings, brother.
Yeah, I didn't debate, but I didn't care. You know, mashallah, this is, you know, because the Bismillah, you know, I can even argue that, well, you know, the beginning of the, you know, it's here in the Quran, it's right there. There's the first ayat.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did he get a call? You froze on us, Majid.
No, you good. You gotta unmute. You gotta unmute your mic.
You gotta unmute the mic, son. Oh, he might have got a call then. Give him a second or two. If not, we'll just close out, inshallah.
Inshallah.
But yeah, I mean, we'll have, you know, these discussions, man. We're gonna, you know, have the format, the platform. We had these discussions where, for informational purposes, not for
right.
disputation and arguing, you know, and things of that nature.
Well, we gotta, but like you said, we just gotta know. Just because there's another way of doing something doesn't invalidate the other way, and that's
exactly.
That's one of the rules in al-amru bin-nahi anil munkar. I mean, that's one of the rules of commanding the right and forbidding the evil is knowledge. That's the first rule. First rule of giving da'wah is understanding and knowledge. Just because you know something, one thing doesn't mean that the other thing that someone else is doing is incorrect. All right? Just because I seen a brother put his hands on his chest or on his shoulders or wherever it might be doesn't automatically make him invalid. But we must understand that also it takes study to understand these things. We just don't go into it and say, oh, I know something because I read one book on the topic. There you go. Assalamu alaikum.
Well, sorry, everybody. DoorDash called and it messed the service up, mashallah.
I mean.
Bless you three. Keep it real. Alhamdulillah. Shukran jazakallah khairan. But we're gonna have a lot of so far in our group we have 3 schools. We're working on trying to find somebody, you know, who's Hanafi, big Hanafi, that could come also teach as well outside of Imam Nadir, he's familiar with the school, but we really want somebody who's Hanafi themselves so we can hit all aspects. So we're going to have a lot of stuff going on within these two groups. So, you know, just keep the A team in your dua because it's just a bunch of brothers doing work. We're trying our best, inshallah. So keep us in your dua. Like, subscribe. You know, we're going to start trying to be like, you know, we're going to start being the preacher imam soon too. Because, you know, we got to start, yeah, I mean, it's not going to lie. You know what I mean? But mashallah, dua, that's the best, you know,
inshallah,
thing you can do for us.
All right, so, you know, close out, inshallah. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik wa shadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Inshallah, everybody, you know, please, you know, make dua for Imam Asim. You know, he was, like I said, he was an icon here in Philly. His reputation speaks for him. Most people know him. You know, what we represent, he was doing that years ago. You know, he was doing that years ago, you know, in the hood, brought his gang with him. He converted, became Muslim, you know, established various masses within the community. So, you know, he has a rich history. He's an icon. He's part of the history. And our youth should know that as well, inshallah. You know, so, inshallah, that's all, you know, we request of the believers. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.